All right, how's that? Okay? There's a little experience with Mike will do. Hey, just so you know in advance, tonight's meeting is going to be a little bit different than what we've been to other meetings. And we're going to, typically since last meeting, we only had a short period of time at the end for public comment. And that was primarily because we had to get a lot through on hearing the consultants. So tonight, after I drag you through another narrative by me, we're going to go right to public comments for an hour, or up to an hour's period of time. So, just want you to know that, and I think there was, last meeting we had 5 people that had a chance to speak. One individual, I think Christine Crocker, I don't remember her name. If she's here tonight, I had to, she couldn't complete her opinion because of time limits, and I would invite her to speak first to finish up her opinion. Okay. But anyways, we're going to go get the meeting started and then go right to public comment, and then after that, we'll get the rest of the meeting and hear the presentations from the applicant, as well as questions from the board to the applicant. Okay? Thank you. Oh. The sign-up sheet will be here, so you step to the podium, please sign it. All right. Welcome to the meeting of Harwich Board of Appeals on this date, July 9th. The purpose of this meeting is to hear and decide applications before the Board of Appeals, which will be brought pursuant to the bylaws of the town of Harwich and the Massachusetts Zoning Enabling Act. I'd like to have all the introduce themselves.
Ken Designing.
Brian Sullivan. Christine Flynn and Rachel Wood. By the way, I should have mentioned that this is going to be video recorded, and there's anyone here that wants to video record this meeting themselves, you need to share it. First, I want to thank Kara McWhinney, Director of Cultural Affairs, and Sarah Beaton, Information Technology Director, as well as their staff for setting up the auditorium for tonight's meeting. I also want to thank Christine Flynn, Harwich Planning Director, and Rachel Ward, the Appeals Board Secretary and Zoning Compliance Officer, for all the getting these meetings planned and squared away. We are here tonight to continue our review of the Pine Oaks for comprehensive permit application. At the last meeting, as I mentioned, it was important to focus on the testimony from expert traffic consultants, police, fire chiefs, which I'm unavoidably left only a short time for public input. And tonight, as I mentioned, after my remarks, we're going to begin right to public input. And we'll do that for now. As chair of the Harwich Board of Appeals, I can assure you that the board acknowledges that we are tasked with a serious responsibility balancing the statutory rights of the applicant under 40B law with Harwich's bylaws stipulating planning, safety, and environmental regulations, and most importantly, community concerns about the impact of proposed development. At the last meeting, I emphasized that the board's responsibility is to consider findings of facts, quantitative data, and expert opinions in our eventual deliberations. Community input is most important, therefore during the public comment period, the board would appreciate and recommend that you support your opinions by referring to data, facts, expert testimony, because that's the best way for us to judge your opinion if it goes against typical documented facts. As a chair of the Harwich Board of Appeals, I can assure you that the board acknowledges, our role is not merely to say yes or no. The ZBA has the power to approve the project as submitted, deny the project if we can clearly demonstrate valid grounds under the law. The applicant can then seek relief, and if a state agency or court determines the denial fails to comply with 40B regulations, then the project will likely be approved as is without community input to improve the design. We can also approve the project with conditions, or perhaps, most importantly, have input in the development's planning, work with the applicant to shape the Pine Oaks Village forward development in a manner that best considers the community needs, while also fulfilling the state's housing goals. What we cannot do is apply local zoning requirements in a rigid and automatic fashion. Chapter 40B allows applicants to request waivers from local bylaws, and we are obligated to grant those waivers unless we find compelling reasons to deny them, grounded in public health, safety, environmental, or other legitimate local concerns in which the grant said waiver would be significantly detrimental. To achieve the best outcome for Harwich, this process should not be adversarial. And I want to stress that there is no decision off the table. If at the end of these hearings the board determines the proposed project poses serious health, safety, and environmental risk, we will act accordingly within 40B guidelines. However, if reasons for denial are not substantiated during these hearings, then a well-designed 40B project with community input will not only deliver critically needed affordable housing, but perhaps one that provides housing opportunities while respecting the scale, infrastructure, and the identity of the neighborhood in our town. So I urge everyone involved, board members, consultants, Pine Oak Village development team, and the Harwich community to continue to approach this with transparency and good faith. Let's focus on facts, listen to concerns, and work together to produce a plan that benefits the applicant and the community. As an agenda was posted, as the first piece of business, I'd like to make a motion that we adjust the agenda and hear public comment period first, public testimony. I would second that motion. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion approved. So, the podium is the community. So we'd like to come first. Oh, excuse me. No. Thank you very much.
Case number 2025-21, Queen LLC in Mid-Gate Church Homes, Inc. This is an annual home. This case is continued from June 18, 2025.
The podium is here. If you want to step up and speak, please. One more last comment, as we've been doing in the past. We're going to allow 3 minutes for public testimony. At 2.5 minutes, you'll be warned that you only have 30 seconds left. We have an hour. If you don't complete your opinion and everyone else has spoken, then you can get back up and speak again. And we'll allow 2 people, and we will allow each person, if they want to speak twice, that'd be fine. So we've got 2 times speaking for 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Sherry Stockdale, North Harwich. This board is tasked with determining if this unprecedented mega development, Pine Village 4, would create extreme traffic and safety issues. There's a myriad of existing problems on the roads surrounding the proposed POD which cannot be overlooked. In addition, it must be taken under consideration what this mega development would mean in conjunction with all of the upcoming and proposed development in this 3-mile stretch of road. As a board, you're being asked to rely on an inadequate 2-day beach tape traffic study with discussion and critique of a data sample so small as to render it invalid and unreliable. Any discussion about data is only as good as the data sample. Here is a breakdown of the existing conditions in the proposed site area, the upcoming developments and the anticipated issues caused by them, and probable developments that are on the horizon. Existing. Queen Anne Road is a well-documented, treacherous road with a high rate of accidents. People have been paralyzed, maimed, and killed on Queen Anne Road. Queen Anne and Main Street have blind hills and narrow sections bordered by telephone poles inches from the asphalt. Queen Anne and Main Street are heavily used by large commercial vehicles, often passing each other with little room to spare and no room for error. Every intersection leading to and from the proposed site is rated as failing. The area of the proposed sites is between 2 industrial zones, 3 if you count the commercial businesses on the Main Street extension. Currently, North Harwich is mixed zoned as light residential and industrial commercial, meaning there is more commercial traffic than vehicular traffic. 80% of the large trucks and cars travel over the speed limit. According to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, a truck traveling at 40 miles per hour weighing 80,000 pounds takes 169 feet to come to a full stop. Trucks weighing 80,000 to 100,000 pounds routinely travel Queen Anne Road and Main Street. The Queen Anne Industrial Zone is operating at full capacity with few or no vacancies. There is no pedestrian or bicycle infrastructure such as sidewalks and bike lanes on Queen Anne or Main Street. The proposed site is miles away from amenities such as grocery store, gas stations, etc. Existing traffic volumes on the roadways of the study area carry 7,000 vehicles on an average day. The dump is on this 3-mile stretch with almost 400,000 visits annually.
30 seconds.
The family pantry is on this 3-mile stretch, serving 800 families per week. From mid-May to November, the exit 10 highway ramp is backed up, often all the way to exit 11. Drivers who would normally exit at 10 exit at 11, causing more traffic on the section of Queen Anne that is east of 124. There's an existing 12-unit housing facility on Main Street Extension called Thankful Chase's Pathway. Queen Anne and Main Street are used as well-known cut-throughs to Chatham. In the evening, both roads are used as high-speed racetracks by thrill seekers. If I have the opportunity to speak again, I'll talk about upcoming developments.
Certainly, thank you very much.
Denise Montgomery, 6 Queen Anne Road. We are here tonight because the developer of the proposed project has asked the Harwich ZBA to waive multiple town coverage requirements, zoning laws, and bylaws with at least 9 that are related to traffic and safety issues. As year-round residents and taxpayers in Harwich for 10.5 years, we are asking the town ZBA to behave responsibly and consider all of the implications that this project will cause to Harwich, its residents and tourists are also a critical part of our economy. We ask that the ZBA not only respect and adhere to the town of Harwich requirements, zoning laws, and bylaws, but we also expect that you will enforce them by denying all requested waivers, as you yourselves are also following a process tonight that is in place for a reason. If you choose not to do that, then we ask that the town insist on an additional traffic study that focuses specifically on the intersection of Queen Anne and Main Street and Depot, that is conducted for at least 2 weeks, 24 hours a day during the summer, and that is conducted by a different independent vendor that the town approves. The study reference in the past meeting stated it was only a 2-day period. We ask that the town insist on an independent risk assessment study with regard to traffic and safety to determine if the project cause extreme traffic and safety issues according to 40B language. We ask that the ZBA also continues to solicit review, comment, and guidance from Harwich Fire Police and first responders. We ask that the ZBA insist that the developers take the burden of all the costs of infrastructure improvements deemed necessary based on the extreme findings without land taking or tax increases. We ask that the ZBA have all the details about the planned daycare center. In the developer's application to the state, it states some land is being set aside for potential daycare/preschool to be built and operated by others. If this developer is not building and running it, how can they ensure it will adhere to all town regulations, laws, and bylaws? We ask that the ZBA consult also with surrounding towns, Dennis, Brewster, and Chatham. They will also be affected by increased traffic and safety issues in Harwich that will spill over to those communities as a result of POV, especially in South Dennis, and impacts to Great Western exit 70A through B. Nothing can be left to chance with the largest project of its kind being proposed in the town of Harwich. It is too big for any location in Harwich. And we are not alone. This is not a NIMBY concern. A petition has been circulating for just a few weeks now that already has hundreds of signatures against this project being built. It is not just residents of North Harwich.
30 seconds, please.
It includes surrounding neighborhoods, towns, regular visitors, and property owners of some homes. If anyone here is not signed us, find out outside. We have the opportunity to sign up. If you want more information, you can email us at POB4@gmail.com. And just one quick comment. Since you guys changed the agenda, there's probably some people that expected to arrive and do public comment between 8:20 and 9:20 as the original agenda said. And maybe they have other, daycare, things like that. So if they aren't here and didn't know you changed it, right, what I'm saying. Thank you.
Sure, I understand.
Hi, Deb Hedgecock, 340 Main Street. Look, I just want to step back and look at all of the projects that are going on, not just this one tonight. The Queen Anne project, 24 condos, or 240 condos, the Cape Tech satellite project at 374 Main Street, the Sunday school project, another condo unit on Queen Anne, and I know there's something else going on by Google or something. I'm still from New York, we travel back and forth. We just retired and plan on moving up to permanent. There is way too much traffic on Main Street and on Queen Anne. You can sit in my driveway anytime you want. They fly by at night on scooters, their pocket wheelies. Even the town of Harwich, maybe blue trucks are going at least 45 miles an hour on that road while I'm talking on the phone, as I noticed today, as we were getting some landscape done in front of our yard. These projects are not going to be able to handle all this traffic. There's got to be better solutions. Queen Anne and Main, if you make that turn, is so dangerous. And even the condition of Main Street needs a paved job because there's so many potholes in it, and there's knolls. So when I pull out of my driveway, I always have to triple check to make sure that nobody's flying over that hill. It's just too dangerous, too many cars, and too many projects going on. Let's not be greedy, let's do the right thing. All right, please accept this. Thank you.
Thank you. Just remind the sign in if you have it.
Don Montgomery, 6 Queen Anne Road, Maryville. I live at the corner of Queen Anne and Main Street, what the consultants call an awkward hairpin turn. That's the experts call it that. Because I live there, my data is eyewitness. I've personally witnessed in the last 5 years 4 crashes at that intersection. 2 were hit and runs. They went away. They just throw away. One that I didn't witness, but I heard, unfortunately, which we believe was fatal, ended up upside down in the woods right across the street from my house. This is a dangerous, dangerous intersection. And by the way, was not studied or mentioned in the consultant's traffic studies. They talked about Main Depot, and they talked about Route 124. They did not talk about Main Street in Queen Anne, which is the most dangerous. We routinely see 10, 15, 20 cars queued up at the stop sign during the rush hours. The traffic starts, by the way, at 4:30 a.m. because of the industrial zone. The way I know that is it wakes me up. My window is right there. I would invite any of you or all of you to come sit on my screen porch and I witness that point, that intersection. We talked about at the last meeting the need to show extreme danger. I would say that the 4 crashes in 5 years, 5 crashes in 5 years, and untold more that I don't even know about, those are the ones I witnessed. That's extreme danger. That corner, that awkward hairpin is a dangerous, extremely dangerous intersection. Secondly, that stop sign, or that intersection rather, is the launching pad for drag racers. They come to that intersection and they go up Main Street, they go down Main Street, and up Queen Anne, and they step on it. There's cars going 70 miles an hour, never mind 45. We see it, I see it with my own eyes. We also hear it. I don't mind the trucks, I don't mind the Jake Briggs, those are people trying to make a living in the industrial area, and that's fine. But as we heard from Sherry, when an 80,000-pound truck comes hurling over that limited sight distance rise, approaching this stop sign at Main Street, if there's 20 cars lined up, they don't know that. They come over that rise.
30 seconds.
And they won't be able to stop. And finally, a significant portion of drivers approaching that intersection are throwing their empty nets into my yard. That means they're drinking and driving. That means they're drinking and driving at a dangerous intersection. And I think that meets the criteria for extreme danger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the entire board. My name is James Kima. I live at 405 Main Street. And I happen to be a proud member of a growing community of concerned citizens from all across town who are for affordable housing, who cannot see without opposing the size of exposure to structure and we have been affectionately labeled UP, and we accept that honor. I support the concerns and suggestions made by Police Chief, Officers Matt Sheehan and Ryan Carr, as well as the other concerned citizens thus far. Current traffic information used by Pinehurst Village to develop the POV traffic assessment is outdated and insufficient. NASDOT info is nearly a decade old. Traffic monitoring for a day or two is insufficient. No analysis or consideration for any of the other existing products that some of the other folks have mentioned. Limited consideration for the traffic from the transfer station, which happened to have over 2,000 trips one day last week. No other consideration has been made for the impact of any intersections other than Queen Anne and Main. Therefore, these and other reasons make any analysis, projections, assessments to the current traffic assessment flawed. The peer review of the traffic assessment outlined over 30 additional requirements, considerations, or clarifications.
Right.
Right? Okay, so hold that for my time.
I will have to time on it.
I look forward to an itemized review of each and every one of those recommendations, not a general proposal that's there. That is what was given as homework. That's what I would expect to hear either in this or subsequent meetings. The ZBA should continue to hold the applicant accountable for required traffic assessment to be resubmitted with all of the required data and be brought up to date with consistent, up-to-date, and comprehensive traffic information, not what they're basing it on right now. A thorough peer review should be done to review the traffic assessment that has been submitted. And all of the peer review department heads should provide input, and those input should be brought into the project. I understand that current conditions cannot be used to reject a 40B proposal. Okay? However, we all know that this project, currently as it's proposed, will transform currently problematic conditions into extreme safety issues. Okay? I respectfully request that the board work with accurate information and either reject all the waivers or substantially reduce the proposal to meet the safety requirements. Otherwise, you will be contributing to an extreme and emergency situation, and you potentially will be facilitating an unfunded mandate to the town and its taxpayers. Not to Pine Oaks, because they've already asked for a 50% discount on taxes.
I'm sorry.
To support the inevitable infrastructure that needs to be done. Thank you.
Actually, before you leave the podium, I just have one question. The information you have regarding the number of visits to be done last week in Florida. Where did you ascertain that from?
I know that one person, no one who's responsible for doing the analysis of this, one person has asked the town for that information. That information was gotten from the town.
Okay, so the town tracks it.
The town tracks it, and I would expect that me or other people in this community over here should be the first ones to be doing that analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Ed Trumbicky guy, 448 Main Street. When I was a small child, I had a toy. Actually, it was more of a learning tool. It was a little bench, had all these holes in the top, and there were these pieces with similar shapes. And it taught you how to associate things that belong together. Show of hands. How many people remember this tool? Okay. I think we need to bring it back because at the last meeting, I heard much thoughtful, diligent studies to try to find a way to fit a square peg in a round hole. Affordable housing requires safe and convenient access to services and amenities. This site does not provide that. It's time to find a square hole for this square hole. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Matt Sutton, Harwich Center.
Signing that, appreciate it.
I have.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you. I fully recognize that the ZBA has a challenge before it. Your board must consider our town codes as well as deal with layers of state requirements and considerations. Sadly, this 40B process has been brought on by well-meaning neighbors who, in their zeal to create housing, are now holding a gun to your head. This zeal may be well-meaning. It's also a diet of steroids. Most of the towns around us are dealing with their shy lists. They are doing so by developing low and moderate income housing at a scale and pace consistent with their size. But no, not Harwich. We have a project that dwarfs anything our neighbors are doing. Apparently, we want to house people so that they can work in Dennis, work in Chatham, work in Orleans, and work in East End. and Harwich is left to handle the accelerated traffic problems. Our neighbors have brought forth an unfriendly 40B. They need not have done so. Yes, there's a housing problem, and yes, the problem is endemic. It is not, however, a housing crisis. No one is sleeping under bridges in Harwich. Future tenants of Condos 4 are not presently living in tents. Presently, they are living somewhere. They are not just living where they might, they are just not living where they might prefer to live. Last night, at a planning board meeting regarding the Sunday school condos in Harwichport, yet another project on steroids, there was some discussion of our local comprehensive plan. In your board's deliberations, it is my hope that the ZBA will not give focus to just data points. Rather, that the board will layer in all the qualitative things we aspire to enjoy in Harwich as residents. The preservation of hamlets being an important one. I'll conclude by saying, what do we want Harwich to look like 20 years from now? Thank you.
Just before the next speaker, just one moment, please. Just a comment for those who are dialing in. On your screen, as you dial in, there's a react button. And if you wish to speak, we can hear you, speak from home, you need to hit the react button, and that will call a hand, whatever, to let us know that we have someone that wants to speak. That's online. Thank you. Please proceed. Oh, the next question.
Is this taking off my time?
No, we're gonna start that clock all over for you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'll start over. Good evening, members of the ZBA members, Iowa representatives, and House residents. My name is Mark Gonzalez. I'm a retired federal architect, address 242 Main Street. The following deficiencies in the POB for permit application are due to increased traffic, also by other projects in the area. A few bullets. No solution to how added safety turning lanes could be added to the north-south intersection of Route 124 to Queen Anne Road. Whether east-west entry ramps to exit Route 2 should be widened to alleviate traffic backup and increase safety on Route 6. Should the POB 4 Queen Anne Road entry have a curb turning lane and exit lane to allow the school bus to safely pick up and drop off children off the eastbound Queen Anne travel lane? No solution to reduce traffic backup on Queen Anne Road and Main Street intersection. For safe exit because the unlevel road grade is too narrow. No solution to reduce traffic backup at Main Street and Depot Street intersection from POB 4 and other newly added businesses as the intersection is too narrow to explain. All these deficiencies will take months and years to obtain funding from state and
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Good evening, Patrick on East Harwich. Why is it that developers determine what happens in Harwich? It is the developers that determine the what, the where, the how much, the nature, and aesthetics of what Harwich will be and look like for the next 100 to 150 years. Residents, the taxpayers, have no say, no input, not even ask. It is developers in pursuit of money and profits that have the say, not the people who live here. The proposed development in North Harwich is zoned light residential, sandwiched between commercial and industrial zones. The proposed development is miles from any resource, stores, pharmacy, library, or schools. The roadways and intersections are unsafe today, not only for vehicles, but also have no accommodation for pedestrians or bicyclists. The proposed POV development is in the wrong place and should not be allowed to happen. Thank you.
Teresa Johnson, North Harwich. Living in North Harwich for over 26 years, I've seen our streets become significantly more traveled and more dangerous with speeding cars, distracted drivers, heavy commercial vehicles, etc. The amount of traffic and accidents have increased considerably and have become very horrific lately. The proposed POV4 development could potentially add 2,200 more vehicle trips to these already treacherous roads. I tried to walk Queen Anne Road, which is very scary. I thought I was going to get run over. The developer encouraging their potential residents and children to walk and ride their bicycles on Queen Anne Road to the nearest services miles away is absolutely absurd. There are no sidewalks or bicycle lanes in this industrial zone area to keep someone safe along these narrow, winding, hilly roads that flood in heavy rain at Depot Street and Main Street and the fragile Harwich River corridor. Queen Anne Road is a main thoroughfare between Harwich and Dennis to avoid backups heading east and west 106. These vehicles then create backups at the three intersections of Depot Street, Main Street, Queen Anne, and Queen Anne 124, all of which already have F ratings according to the recent traffic studies. In addition, there is traffic entering on Route 124 from the dangerous old exit 10 Grant, deemed as one of Cape Cod's most dangerous exits according to the Cape Cod Commission, which will get worse with a new commercial business anticipated at the former Marceline Junkyard across from the old exit 10 Grant. Then, in addition, from the upcoming Marceline housing development of 60 units, the proposed POV4 development of 242 units in the Eagle Farm Nursing Home in Dennis with 79 units, the only entrance and exit through North Harwich. All within a 2-mile radius of each other would have a detrimental effect on these dangerous intersections mentioned. Located in the middle of this 2-mile radius in Harwich is the Harwich Transfer Station, which has 395,383 visits annually, which I got the information from Mr. Hooper at the Harwich Highway Department. And the Harwich Food Pantry serving 800 families per week. We can't fix a problem by making another problem worse. Please improve the traffic and roadway problems that already exist before adding more vehicles to these treacherous roadways. The proposed POV4 developer would have rental income indefinitely, and they should be responsible for fixing this problem, not the Harwich taxpayers, or relying on the town to obtain future grants. Please consider denying all request waivers for this project. It's too big, violates many town bylaws that residents have to adhere to, does not conform with the existing neighborhood, and will exponentially increase traffic, road safety, and infrastructure problems. Another concern is the Main Street access road. It's not of legal width, and neither abutter is willing to grant an easement. So how can this be considered a viable second egress option if it doesn't meet town standards?
Come on down. Good evening.
My name is Jan Kelly. I live on Deacon's Valley Road and with my husband and my daughter. We abut Main Street. We've been there for 36 years. I'm just going to read something. My husband couldn't come tonight and he wrote down a few things. In Massachusetts, the Vulnerable Road Users Law mandates that motorists provide a safe passing distance of at least 4 feet when overtaking pedestrians, cyclists, and other vulnerable road users. This law, which went into effect on April 1st, 2023, also allows drivers to cross a double yellow line when safe and within speed limits to ensure adequate passing space. The law aims to increase safety on roadways for those not protected by vehicles. The law broadly defines vulnerable road users to include pedestrians, cyclists, and individuals using wheelchairs or personal mobility devices, those on scooters, skateboards, roller skates, and even those on horses. What does this mean in regards to roads in the immediate vicinity of this project? It means that the yellow lines will need to be crossed for almost every encounter of vehicles and any vulnerable user. It was suggested at the previous meeting that residents of POV4 would be encouraged to, in order to reduce vehicular traffic, to bike or walk. So we would, in essence, be encouraging a constant conflict on the surrounding roadways. We need to consider the reality of the situation. Children would simply not be safe on these roads. As a teenager growing up on Cape Cod, it was normal to walk or ride my bike to many places. And though I do walk and ride my bike on Main Street, there is no way I would do either of those on Queen Anne Road. On Main Street, I have encountered more than one person who didn't give me the required room because of a corner or one of the cliffs in the road. One of the dips in the road didn't allow them to see me until they were almost upon me. On those occasions, when another vehicle was approaching in the other direction, they didn't give themselves the option of the lane, forcing me off the road. As an adult, I know to watch very closely for the cars because they aren't necessarily expecting to see a pedestrian. The road shoulders in many areas along Main Street are not really suitable for walking. In many areas, the sideline, the white fog line, is painted on the very edge of the pavement. Unsuitable shoulders for walking and no room outside of the edge line mean that most walking and riding is done on or inside the center line. It would be, in my opinion, beyond irresponsible to encourage walking or biking on these roads. They simply are not designed to handle safe walking.
30 seconds.
I would not consider them to be good bike alternatives. I hope the members of the board won't take my word for any of this. Get your bike, take a ride around the complete area. I would suggest starting at the disposal area, riding up Queen Anne to Pleasant Lake, down Pleasant Lake to Harwich Center, proceed to Main Street and return to the disposal area. Then do the same thing as a pedestrian, assuming the bike ride doesn't unnerve you completely. When driving home recently, coming from the four-way stop at Depot in Maine, traffic was backed up in the intersection up to Queen Anne, and for as far as I could see up Queen Anne. You may want to check that out too. Don't rely on traffic reports that are already outdated. Go out and do your own research. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Michael McCaskill from Oslo Road, Harwich. First, I have a couple of questions, and I was told earlier by the chair that those questions would be answered later. First question was related to a comment made by the chair after both traffic consultants spoke last week and board members started to ask questions. The chair, and this is not an exact quote, but that's okay, we're here to solve problems. And that was related to the daycare issues that were presented to the board in the traffic report. So I'd like to understand what the chair meant by we're here to solve problems, as I thought we were here to review an application as submitted. This appears, and this is an opinion, to be the ever-changing application, and often mistakes or changing. An application as submitted should be submitted, and that's what we should be reviewing, in my opinion. The next question was the traffic safety, was the peer review performed using only Pine Oaks' traffic data, or was the town of Harwich's traffic report used in that as well? But if it was simply the peer review of Vanessa's traffic study, it's absolute shame, as it was 165 pages of nothing, with 2 data depth. So hopefully, the peer review at least will use that. To the question on the dump data, very easy to obtain. I was able to pull 6 months worth of data with a quick conversation. The other day there was 2,100 cars at the dump, and then the next day there was 1,950. Very simple data. I don't think either traffic engineer had the thought to talk to people like that. Last one, second paragraph of the peer review, GHD's statement, industry, it said as far as standards, they've begun using industry, local, and state standards. I'd like to know, and I think the public would like to know, when those were actually written.
I'm sorry, Mike, can you restate that again?
So industry standards, second page of the GHD memo to the Board of Appeals for peer review, said that it was used using industry standards by state, local, and industry standards, local, and state standards. So I'd like to know when those standards were written. I'll go quickly on to extreme. The word extreme is used in the chair. You did a great job explaining that and what you have to rule on. Extreme, I think our peer review consultant couldn't answer that question. But I think that the young man that lives in Chatham that's now paralyzed from a car that pulled out in front of him on Queen Anne Road trying to get across busy traffic, pretty sure he could tell us all what extreme is. The other person that died on a motorcycle on Queen Anne Road by a car pulling out in front of him, I'm sure his family could also explain what extreme is. I have more to say, but I can't do it in 30 seconds or less now, so I'll stand back up and do it. But it's related to the 40B process and where the town of Harwich actually is.
Okay.
And what the board is allowed to do if we're at that safe harbor or close to that safe harbor.
Thank you.
I look forward to speaking to you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Duncan Berry. I am chair of the planning board of Town of Harwich. I am here only as a private citizen who lives in West Harwich. I would like to make a comment about the nature of the proceedings here, which is to consider, as you introduced it, as a matter of assorting facts and data. I would argue that what we're looking at here is a process that is essentially a strategic analysis of where Harwich is going. This is not simply one process, like a spreadsheet you provide. This is actually a strategic implementation that starts with the data. And as probably the most famous strategist, military strategist of the 20th century, Colonel John Boyd said, strategy starts where the data ends. We need to start looking at what the significance is of the data when you look at it aggregated through different qualitative filters, as Mr. Sutton said, as well as the soundness and validity. I think we have significant evidence this evening of a kind of questionable sorts of data. I think there are significant questions about particularly traffic and safety issues. And I also would say that in that process of considering the data, our town has drifted by relying on a simple kind of qualitative checklist spreadsheet perspective. And our drift has led us into this kind of autistic, passive acceptance that is actually costing us the ethos of our town. I would very much like to see this board introduce qualitative analytic procedures for elements that are not metrically organized. And I would ask you to consider whether or not in your own personal lives, whether or not these are factors that you would, for instance, in your personal life, your romantic life, do you look only for hard metric data and a spreadsheet to tally the pros and cons of your love life? Because if you are, this is probably the wrong place for you to be going, because this is a group of people. This is about people in the town. And the vast majority of people here are saying you have a scale issue. We are one order of magnitude beyond the tolerance of our infrastructure, and I would suggest that that is a critical factor in what you have to look at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Shaw, Street,
You can speak closer to the mic, I appreciate it.
I do own a horse paddock that is in question also, and I do want you to know that it's been a little tired because of foot fire, really more like heat pig, because we got over it recently after a coyote, it was gone for half an hour, and that coyote came around for half an hour, which we're talking about. I'm not opposed to affordable housing, but I do not agree with the proposed plan for these reasons. One, it requires increased safety with increased traffic. Two, the village of North Harwich's character and historic feel need to be preserved. And yes, it's the Cape Cod is that small village feel and history where we live there. Main Street plan and people have a lot of historic culture. Cape Codians live there, community, and a lot of that population is, there's that population. There's a lot of history that goes with that. And then we're actually looking into the park with the town of Chatham, because Harwich doesn't want to be part of it, roads designated as scenic roads or historic roads. And I've been looking into, I've been talking with Chatham about it, they, 1987 had 42 scenic roads or historic roads that they've designated as that, so that those roads can be preserved and not changed a lot. It's not like a historic district where you worry about houses or anything, it's about to preserve the roadway, the tall, the big trees and stone walls, anything that's there could not be disturbed without a human. Take a tree and all that. That's, but it would preserve the road from being destroyed and changed. There were a lot of things like the railroad that ran through Main Street. The grist mill is located on the corner of Queen Anne and Main. There's a foundation for the school, and that exists on Main Street, just off of Main Street. Used to be stores there. There's a lot of history. And Chatham's way ahead of us in this, to try to preserve their roads and preserve the feeling of Chatham by doing so. They informed me that the historic commission also, or the historic society, informed me that they could have at least one road every town meeting that's voted on. It is voted on by town meeting, so if that is something that citizens of Harwich could get done.
30 seconds now.
So, in the future traffic nightmares, we already know about them. We've all talked about them, and I don't know why we would wait until 60% of the project is done to actually address those. I think that should help determine the feasibility of this proposed project. Not when 60% of the project is done, the proposed project is done. But anyway.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet or would like to speak to the board? Hi there, my name is Jim Fife. I live just off of Queen Anne. Tried that way many times and hold my breath most of the time. One thing in this proposal by the Pine Oaks group that just floored me. And that was that they wanted
for a list of at least a half a dozen things that people here, and I assume you too, would find exorbitant. Because those waivers would be with us for forever, I guess. And I just hope that when you look at the list of waivers, you see what they want to do, but which they should not be allowed to do. That's all I have to say to that.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. My name is Arthur Bowden. I live in Harwich Center. I'll just give you a little background. I live on Orleans Road. I live right across the street from the corner of Hope and Go. I know traffic. I know accidents. And a guy right in front of my house. Okay? I feel the pain. But that doesn't make me want to leave Harwich or Cape Cod. But that's not my message tonight. My message is to listen to everybody, and everyone needs to have an opinion, and you have some good arguments, and you just have some arguments. But my point I want to make out here is Pine Oaks. They're not a developer that came from East Oshkosh someplace, off Cape. There are neighbors. They've been in town 45 to 50 years. Okay? They house 163 units, senior citizen units. And I've talked to a number of those people that live there. They love it. Why do they love it? Because it's a great place to live. Not because in Harwich, true, that's half the equation. The other half is Pine Oaks. They run a good organization. The people are happy there. They're well maintained, so on and so forth. Once again, it's not your ordinary developer that comes into town, is going to build something and then gone. These people are here. They're going to be here long after the project hopefully gets built or not, whatever you decide. They're going to be here forever. So my message is, if somewhere in the process or after the process is over, you have a bone to pick with Pine Oaks, you can reach out and touch them. And if you really have a bone, you can drive by and throw a brick at their building or something if you're so inclined. But there are neighbors. And I have to give them credit. I believe they know what they're doing for Harwich. They've already done a great process, a great asset. And I think they want to extend it. So we have to start with that. There are neighbors. They're not somebody else's neighbors. They don't come from Boston or New York or whatever. They come from Cape Cod, they come from Harwich. Thank you.
There you go. Oh, pardon. Please, we'll respect here with the speakers. Speakers have views and opinions. There is no reason to speak out.
My name is Angela Flowers, and I'm actually the closest abutter to this project. I live 5 houses away from the corner, from the beginning of Queen Anne Road, just before where they're going to build this road going into the project. And I moved there about 40 years ago with 2 young children. And even then, I was like petrified of the traffic. There's the 40-mile-an-hour signs are just around my house, just past it. And people would see these signs way before, at the beginning of Queen Anne Road, and just go speeding by. So I was very protective of my children. But now, when I see the plans, the child care center is going to be right next door to me. So there's children right close to Queen Anne Road, which really scares me. There is no room for sidewalks, especially as you get closer to the intersection of Main Street. I don't think they could ever put in sidewalks, which would be needed. And then I've seen accidents in front of my house or close to my house. Just last year, there were 2 very serious ones. One accident took out 2 telephone poles, like diagonal across from my house. And so I'm just really concerned about the safety. In fact, when double-wide trucks go by, they take all the room that we have in Queen Anne Road. And I do realize we do need housing for people, but perhaps if they could just, like, maybe make it half the size, and I don't know if it's possible to put another, like, exit near the power lines, and that would make traffic a little bit easier, and make those roads maybe one way. I don't know, I'm just thinking of ways. I'm sure that there are ways to make it a little bit smaller and safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
Good evening, Board. I commend you for having an in-depth study on this. It's not like one and done. You guys just spent 6 or 8 months listening to us, so thank you for that very much. My name is Tom Burge, resident of Queen Anne Road, a business owner of Queen Anne Road. I moved from down Queen Anne Road to my present location at 76 Queen Anne Road because they put in development in my backyard. I moved there because I love the area, I love nature, I love a little density of it. Now we want to do something like this. I built a pool for my family. I went to the town, I had to abide by every zoning rule that the town of Harwich has. I was required to meet all those. I couldn't get variances, I couldn't ask for waivers. I would like you to honor the rest of everyone in here that has to follow by the zoning rules and not allow any waivers for this project. There's no need for it, and those are there to protect the environment, protect the residents, and protect the town of Harwich. Thank you.
Anyone who hasn't spoken yet would like to speak? Seeing. Good evening.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk to you. I think by now you've heard all about the issues regarding the traffic and the problems with congestion and the risk that people take even today before this development is in place of simply going down to Mango. So, while I fully agree with all of that, that is not something that I'm going to touch upon. I'd like to speak to another topic, which is the environmental impact that this project will have. If you dump something like the equivalent of 45,000 gallons of waste into the Caribbean River Basin. If even, which is already, by the way, full of nitrogen, if even a single tree is removed to put this project in place, it's all going to make another contribution to the global warming that we have in this country, in this state, and in Harwich. Not something we can afford. What are we going to tell our children and our grandchildren about what kind of a world we're living in? So please, this project of this size cannot be allowed in that location because it will destroy a lot of the wetland around it, and it will create a huge problem for the environment. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak on this program? Seeing none,
Good evening. My name is Paula Miles. I live on Main Street, very near the four-way stop. And I've been here a long time. And I can tell you about neighbors. Neighbors are the people that I looked around at who could walk across the street to visit each other. They could visit their aunts and uncles. There's a big Cape-Verdean neighborhood that I grew up, that I moved into and was fortunate to live in. Neighbors cannot walk across the street now. Neighbors cannot stop and get their mail out of their mailboxes now unless they're going to lose a hand or a head. My neighbors have just moved their mailbox to the backyard and got permission to have it delivered there. The neighborhood has changed. And maybe the developers are not from Boston, but their ideas are from Boston. Those places are so big and so faceless and just disturbingly anonymous. They do not belong in our neighborhood. I drove a school bus years ago, and I can tell you, when I would drive up to a spot to pick up youngsters, I wanted to park off the road as much as I could so kids had a chance to get on and off the bus safely. There is no safe place in the neighborhood up by where Pine Oaks would be. That's not a safe place for school buses. And it wouldn't be just one school bus. There'll be a school bus for kindergarten, there'll be one for elementary school, there'll be one for middle school, and two for the different high schools. And they all arrive at different times, and they all come through heavy traffic. Neighbors don't like seeing this. We're afraid of this. There's also the issue of the nursery school. I've worked in a daycare center. It's bedlam. A mom drives alone to drop her kid off. She doesn't get out of the car, right? She can't park. So what is it? A toddler going to get out of the car and walk to the place by himself? And when they come out of the school, are they being escorted from the car safely to where the mother is sitting with the car engine running? Or does the mother maybe take a neighbor to go with her? This is just a crazy plan. To put all of this down in the middle of our neighborhood is just insane. And I hope you'll put as many safeguards on it as possible because it's not safe for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kristen Crooker. My house, my residence is at 323 Main Street. My business is at 270 Main Road. And I agree with the concerns of my community members. This project is entirely too large for our community. The chairperson at the beginning of the meeting discussed making it fit for our area, and this just is not it. I just want to talk about, I'm on record about my safety concerns from the last meeting, but I just want to specifically talk about an area of concern just west of the bike path on Queen Anne Road. There are telephone poles on each, right across from each other, on each side of the road
personally had incidents where a bicycle has been on the side of the road, a vehicle is traveling in the opposite direction of me and comes into my lane, and I've had several near misses in that particular area. So the idea of adding additional pedestrians, e-bikes, and bicycles from this proposed development to the bike path is dangerous. And again, every single community member that needs to go to the transfer station or use any of the businesses on Green Ant Road, their safety will be jeopardized. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we end the public comment period, there was one, I think, initial lady that spoke that wanted to come back and speak, and then the other person was Massey.
Thank you for giving me another chance to speak. Sherry Stockdale. I just want to make a comment on what the previous gentleman said about how the Pine Oaks group are friends and neighbors and not from Boston. That is really irrelevant to this situation. Doesn't matter if they're our neighbors or if they're crisis capitalists trying to build a cash cow. The result will be the same for us. And the danger that we'll face and the danger our loved ones who come to visit us will face, put yourself in that position. Put yourself in the position of a resident at the Pine Oaks Village who is riding their bike. Think about what that would feel like. Please, when you drive through those roads, imagine yourself on a bicycle. The Queen Anne Main Street intersection is the biggest roll through in town. And we actually call it 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon because everybody knows someone that's been in an accident at that spot. I was rear-ended there because the person behind me didn't expect me to stop. And that's part of the course of that very dangerous intersection that has no room for error, no space for anyone to walk or ride a bike, and barely enough room for big trucks that are constantly passing each other. So earlier I spoke about the current conditions, and a lot of other speakers have too. This is what's definitely coming. And the 60 units of the new housing development on the Marceline property will add directly to the traffic at the Queen Anne 124 intersection. The entrance will be just yards from the intersection on Queen Anne. It is expected to generate somewhere between 300 and 600 vehicle trips on an average weekday. Something else that is definitely coming. The 79 units at the new transitional housing development at Eagle Pond will add directly to the traffic at the Depot Main Street intersection, as this is the only entrance and exit to the property. Note that Eagle Pond will have no food facilities, which means they will need to truck food in, or people will be coming and going at meal times. According to the Cape Cod Commission, on a typical weekday, a 177 resident transitional shelter will be expected to produce 140 to 258 vehicle trips. There are 2 large new businesses being built on what was previously vacant land on Queen Anne, a landscape and nursery and a swimming pool business, adding their commercial vehicles to this road. Most likely coming online is the valuable commercial property on 124 that will likely someday house something like a CVS or a gas station, adding more traffic and congestion. And there is the Cape Cod Tech satellite site proposed for 374 Main Street, which would add buses, vans, and more cars to the area. That's all without POV coming online. If POV comes online, 2,000 vehicles added to roads and intersections. 1,000 people, which would be 8% of the town's year-round population, housed in a small area with one entrance and exit. 35% of those cars would be heading to the intersection of Queen Anne 124, which would exceed 25 new vehicles per hour at this failing, inadequate, overburdened intersection. Proposed daycare center, whole separate issue. It's a separate stand. It's a new business for the area, and it would be very dangerous to have a school bus stop there. I think the thing that scares me the most is the thought that I might hit somebody on a bike or an e-bike while I'm driving around there, or that I might get hit by a large commercial vehicle, because there are 3 industrial sites all around that. I know that's really inconvenient for the developers, but that's the situation that they're trying to build into. Thank you.
Just wanted to emphasize the rest of the extreme before I go on to the shy list. Pedestrians, and I would just echo what everybody else says. Pedestrian and bikes on that road with no shoulders. Our police chief said it best. The traffic engineers failed us completely due to antiquated data. But our police chief spelled out exactly what's going on. But the other extreme piece is the tax burden. One of the traffic consultants last week spoke of $4 million grants. I'm not sure if he's paying attention to the state, but they are running out of money. And I could not find the same crystal ball or have the same emphasis or knowledge that you have that we're going to get grants. The taxpayers are paying us, along with the $500 million worth of wastewater projects we're paying for now. So extreme to me would be some of the tax bills that folks are going to get that won't be able to pay for them. As far as the shy list goes, the town of Harwich was in the top 5 towns on the Cape just 2 years ago. What happens on the shy list and getting to that made up number by the state of 10%, what happens is, as you're approaching it, you may not be in safe harbor, but the state looks at it. We dropped from 6.3%, I believe, to 4.3% because after a certain amount of years, houses fall off. These affordable housing projects, like Pine Oaks, and I believe one of their units fell off the shy list as well, they only pay 50% of the taxes. So we're subsidizing what we're being asked to subsidize right now already. So we fell off. Not one person has come forward to the town and asked the town if they can pay their tax bills in full. Not one. So they've fallen off. So actively right now, our housing coordinator and our assessing department are working on a policy, but be with the people that fell off. So it's highly likely, if they're our friends and neighbors, that they're going to put themselves back on that shy list so we get credit for that tax rate. We're building, the town of Harwich is doing a phenomenal job right now through its affordable housing trust, and mostly through the residents and taxpayers that support the $500,000 to $1 million every year to put into the affordable housing trust. We are working on housing faster than we ever have. So it's realistically, we're going to be back up over that 6% threshold. And we've got a 60-unit being made. We have the West Harwich project being made in the old school. We have Bank Street Firehouse, and there's others that are in the works right now. So we're creeping up on where we need to be. So this project, based on greed, based on size, is asking to add 242 units, which would elevate us way over the 10%. So I would ask you the same as others have asked. Deny every waiver that you can deny. Let the state come in and try and decide, and then let the Board of Selectmen, the current Board of Selectmen, go to the state with lawsuit and go after them and represent the people of this town. The last board voted against this project. I know that doesn't mean anything, it can't, but maybe the new board will take this fight to the state so that we stop creating an emergency by trying to solve something that's already an emergency from 420. Thank you for your time.
This is it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you giving me the chance. I just wanted to go back to something else I didn't talk about earlier. We're here for traffic and safety, but I have a different point of view about safety specifically with regard to this proposed project. The other developments that Pine Oaks Village has, I have worked out or run very well, and the people that live there are very happy. These are senior communities. What's being proposed is a family community of 242 units, way above and beyond anything you guys have any experience with. I am speaking from experience. I've managed a 228-unit complex. I've managed a 565-unit complex in my class. They have affordable housing. Section 8 is not a hit file, but it comes with a whole host of all kinds of other problems and issues and safety issues that you are not prepared to address, or at least you need to be prepared to tell us how you're going to address them. Because based on your experience with your other communities, you can't demonstrate that yet today. And that is a huge concern, especially when we live so close there. So that's the only other thing I would bring up with regard to specific to safety and not just the traffic issue. Thanks.
Well, thank you all for speaking tonight about this important part of the meeting to hear from the community, allow our board to assess your concerns, getting information that we can move forward, including staff. So at this point, in this session on topics, so you all understand, our board, because of open meeting law requirements, etc., we have not had an opportunity to speak amongst ourselves regarding where we're at and what priorities this board wants to establish, perhaps for the balance of this meeting. So we're going to take a moment here amongst the board to discuss questions we may have for the applicant, direction we need going, concerns, etc., reports we may think we might need. We'll take 15 minutes or so doing that, and then after that is done, we might have a quick little break, and then we'll go on and have the presentation done by the applicant tonight on some other topics. Okay? So, is there anyone who wants to pick up these first regarding any questions you have?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to once again amend the agenda. That's not what's next. That's the amendment to go there.
Discussion of the board with line traffic and public safety is number one.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm on number one. So who else? Okay, so on the agenda, discussion by board regarding traffic and public safety report and where we're at. So, well, I will try to kick these off now. One item that I said at the beginning, in the first meeting, as well as, was that based upon 40-year regulations, and I want perhaps Judy to chime in here, is that infrastructure is not considered a problem or responsibility of the applicant, and particularly on pre-existing problems. However, so far what I've heard from the traffic professionals is that Queen Anne Road is at best D, a D-rated road. If it's higher than that, someone please explain to me, but during the report so far, it appears that this road is D-rated and heading towards the F situation. Now we have a project that's going to add, a number of cars per day. Now, if this was, at what point, and I asked this question last week of Mike, and by the way, I need to have Mike unmuted. Okay, so we need to have Mike and Amy that are unmuted. Okay? Who's responsible? I think that one comment from, I think it was Duncan Berry, brought up strategy. My opinion is, as zoning board of appeals, we deal with written laws, written regulations. We are not in the strategy business. The strategy, as I see it, is based upon the town's comprehensive planning program. That's where strategy is done. The strategy is where new zoning regulations come into effect. The strategy is how the state handles its 40B regulations. In my opinion, this board has to look at the facts and decide, what impact this project has. Now, I would like to know, particularly from our consultant, your group consultant, and from Judy, so the question I'm going to have is, how do we judge if this project is, the straw that camel's back? And if this road was already, it was rated a B, what would be the impact? If we didn't have the current problems on Queen Anne Road, which the community so far, as we've known for a long time, hasn't addressed, what is the responsibility, and does this project, given the nature of it and that road, can we consider it a step too far to condition it or deny it based upon that traffic? I'd like to hear from the consultants on that. The other questions I have will come down to the traffic studies that were done, whether or not standards are a 2-day study, if that's adequate given the scope of this project. I don't have the answer to that. This is the first time I've looked at a traffic study, so I'd like to know from our consultants if 2 days is appropriate. So those are my major two items of questions. Is that enough? John?
Your question on the traffic studies is clearly the town, and we witnessed it ourselves, we have a problem. From a theoretical standpoint, any developer in town, given the businesses that exist on Queen Anne Road and the public services that exist on Queen Anne Road, and the traffic on Queen Anne Road worse, we already looked at that. So from an information gathering standpoint, I'd like to know what are current plans of the town for the highway department to improve any of the issues that are on Queen Anne Road that would have to be changed in one time to budget capital. It seems to me we're headed towards that problem irrespective. There was a good list of Marsh Line and the other units that are going to be built. Those people will need to use the public services and the dump and everything that exists on Queen Anne Road, as well as the, will likely patronize the businesses that exist on Queen Anne Road. So it is probably, of course, not the same kind of village's proposal for like if the town has any plans, what those might be and how they might be impacted by anything that's proposed here. Additionally to that, again, it may not be a discussion for this meeting, but I, not being an expert on public housing policy and what the state's goals are, I'd like to understand better the failure to continue to meet the state's goals on things like school reimbursement rates or other benefits the town gets from the state if we do not meet the goals that are set by the state with regards to affordable housing. Again, from my perspective, I just want to understand it better.
Thank you.
My questions are somewhat quantitative and directed to the applicants themselves. We've all read the letters together here, we've all driven down the roads. I drive down transportation on a regular basis. I've done driving down on a regular basis. I know how dangerous they are now. There's been numbers thrown around that I need to have some answers here. I believe the public needs to have some answers. A number of residents, they anticipate this thing gets done as proposed 10 years from now. Is it 1,000, is it 800, is it 400, a lot of different numbers. I think we all need to know the answer to that. And my question to the developers. Traffic, same thing. I'm reading signs that say this intersection cannot handle 2,200 cars a day. Those signs are Queen Anne and Main Street. I need to know from the developer. Are they anticipating 2,200 daily visits a day at that intersection? That'd be unacceptable. So I guess the last thing, two more things. I'm concerned that we didn't study the Main Street and Depot Road four-way that several issues have talked about today. I think that needs to be included in the traffic study and the review of the traffic study. And finally, having read the paper like most of us do, I thought the fire chief was quoted as saying that we're anticipating 700 more calls a year because of time notice. I don't remember hearing that number from him, and I would like to have some clarification on that. Thank you.
Al?
My concern is, what everybody else said, a lot of the traffic on Greenwood, how are we going to do this? Is the state or the town willing and able to correct the problems on Queen Anne Road? They're numerous, more than I want to count. I drive over that road, much like many of you, others do, not many times. I've been up and down that numerous times. I've actually pulled off the side of the road person to watch some of this traffic go by. If the family community is located a short distance up the road, there are a number of people who actually use the family community have declined the last number of years because of need. And I think some of you are may have family community.
that traffic from there adds to the concern that you have relative to the volume of traffic on this road. Without the state, let alone the problems at 124, that is a nightmare. I sat in traffic there yesterday, and I know the difficulties that you are experiencing, that we are experiencing. Trying to get through 124, up to Route 6. And by the way, yesterday, I was on Route 6. Was backed up from exit 10 to Orleans. Trying to get traffic out there, and it was mentioned by one of the speakers, the land at the intersection, where the traffic lights are, is unavailable in the town. Trying to increase that intersection between Ann and 124 is going to be a serious problem. With that, I'm going to give my time over to the next speaker. And I hear you very well. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
The other question I would have is the potential, if we do get grant money, if there are any other projects that have occurred in the town of Harwich similar to the school that these kind of things have been successful. Implemented and reduced traffic issues. It's something that's occurred in the town of Harwich.
One of the traffic issues, I had a question, Senator, I had over those, similar to what Matt said. If you go to daycare center, one important thing you have to find out, any of us with grandkids, parents, kids, have gone into these centers, make sure parking, fooding, make sure they open up the sufficient room, and is far enough away from being in a safety area that is question I had on that traffic study, industry standard, that's been brought up several times, and that's obviously a key thing. Any traffic study that we base that decision on has to be based on what the standard in the industry is, not some random number. It wasn't, but it has to be the industry standard. And one thing that's probably in this book that we're going to be looking at here tonight, if possible, the exact timeline where this is going to be based. If we're talking a 10-year program, again, it goes in the book, I think everyone would like to hear that. Maybe we need to slow this down. Make sure the infrastructure improvements that need to be done even right now to get done. The build of the project is
No? The other couple of points I have in the board tonight. First of all, regarding the bus situation. I have concerns regarding buses picking up children, pulling over on Queen Anne Road. And I really do feel the fact that I'd like to have it addressed at the applicant is going to approach the school department to review having buses enter the property. The state law is the fact that it is allowed if the school can be, or the school department approves it. So it's up to the school department to decide to allow buses to go into a private development or a private road. And I'd like to know if the developer has approached the town, the school department on that, and where that situation might stand for bringing buses into the development. Because I have concerns on buses stopping beside the road and then greatly backing up traffic, either way, particularly towards Queen Anne and Main Street. The other thing I would like to see is, and I think it was requested already, but my understanding was has not been prepared yet, is regarding the traffic disbursement. At the last meeting, the gentleman's name, the traffic consultant, did indicate the fact that if there was a main access directly from the development to Main Street, it would change the traffic disbursement pattern and the volume of traffic that would be going on Queen Anne Road. And I certainly would like to see that report, for us to assess and then discuss it as a group. I had missed myself the fact that there was no traffic study on Main Street and in the intersection of actually Depot Road. And I do agree with the fact that that's another situation where I'm saying it needs to be reviewed. So, that being the case, I think everyone know our town attorney, Amy Gussel, is online. She couldn't appear tonight in person, but she is online. And as well as Michael, and I apologize, Mike, I forget your last name. Michael Santos, who's our peer consultant, is online. And I'd like to first, probably Chair's prerogative, go back to my question on how we evaluate the fact that this project would be a step too far, regardless of the condition of Queen Anne Road now.
So, is it on me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Mike.
Okay, the audio is a little shaky on my end, so can you repeat the question that you're asking?
Well, Mike, I asked a question last week and so forth was, if in fact, and Judy can discuss this as well, that the board, cannot deny on infrastructure issues and traffic and safety issues unless it is a extreme detriment for the eyes of how the regulations have gone with the state and how they view other projects in the past. And I'd like you to comment on that, if at this point in the traffic studies, it does show the fact that this is way too much for that street, regardless of the fact of the current condition. So if the street was in fine order, we'll start with that, would this project be a problem? And given the current situation, and this is probably more for Judy, can we deny because of the additional traffic that is going to be put on demand and the impact of this because of this project? So, Mike?
Yeah, so we discussed this at the last meeting, and so what I had mentioned was that I don't believe that this project will have that extreme impact to allow you to deny it. There are some issues that will need to be addressed. The applicant had said that there's capacity issues at the intersection of Queen Anne Road and Pleasant Lake Avenue. There were a couple additional requests that we asked the applicant to look into after the last meeting through email. One was looking at the geometry at Main Street and Queen Anne Road, just to see if there are safe distance issues there. because the project will have impacts there. And the third one, which is, probably not on the developer, but it's the pedestrian issues that have been discussed tonight on Queen Anne Road. There's no sidewalk. So that's the third issue that I think needs to be addressed. All three of those, I think the capacity issues at Queen Anne and Pleasant Lake Avenue can be addressed. We asked them to provide an updated analysis, so we haven't seen any additional information to make that determination if they can be addressed through what they're proposing. And the other two issues, we asked them to look into the geometric issues at Main Street, Queen Anne Road. And then the sidewalk, I think, is the bigger issue that we'll need to work with them on. But as far as having an extreme impact, I understand there are a lot of issues out there existing, but they're incremental impact. I wouldn't consider that an extreme impact outside of what other similar as residential projects might have. I understand it's a large project, 2,000 trips a day, or whatever that might be. Seems like a lot of trips a day, but when you spread that out, I can't say that will have extreme impacts.
Judy,
I hope that answers the question.
Judy, you have any comments regarding how the state housing and so forth, and your experience would address current situation with this project on development on Queen Anne Road?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
I was asking Judy the question, but I asked her to comment regarding the impact, traffic impact of this development, and how the state would view it as being more responsibility the applicant had.
So by the state, do you mean the executive office and housing?
Thank you.
I just want to be clear because there's different agencies.
The agencies that regulate the 40B applications.
Well, I think if you're here with your consultant, it's suggesting that this project, the impact of the project is not as what I would call it. That the issue really is what improvements would be the responsibility of the applicant, which has to be separated from the existing condition which we're talking about, which are really responsibilities of the town. So I'm not an engineer, I can't answer that question. It's really where we're going to need input from your consultant, but I can just tell you, if a peer review consultant is saying this is the different case that I think the board needs to focus on is, so what improvements are allocable to the project and what improvements are the town's responsibility. Separate from any question about how much time. So I don't know if the council has that answer, but I just, that would be my experience.
Amy, do you have any comments on that? Oh, sure. You have any mic.
So I'm just using the term in reference to what the peer review consultant said, that we wouldn't see this as being a piece of
Speak up.
I'm doing my best. Thank you.
Just be close to the mic. Okay, thank you. Mike, the other question I had was regarding the number of days that this traffic study was done. Given the depth and the size of this project, I know there may be an industry standard for residential development for a 2-day study, but this is a rather large residential development on a clear impact area. And we only had 2 days here. What is your viewpoint on that? And should there be more studies done regarding additional days, as well as the assessment of Depot Road and Main Street?
That's directed towards me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So typically for traffic studies or residential projects, the data collection would occur over the course of, you typically do turning movement counts, which they did during the peak periods on a typical day. which is what they did, that's over one day. They collected daily counts on Queen Anne Road over the course of 2 days, 48 hours. And based on my experience, industry standards for traffic studies for projects of this size and this scope, for residential projects specifically, that this falls in line with industry standards. So I would say that how they conducted the traffic study is in line with the industry standards, in line with what you would see if you review traffic studies done for NEPA projects or other Cape Cod Commission projects or local projects throughout the state of Massachusetts. So their methodology is within standards. The other thing that we can ask them to do, and I've actually looked at this, is we have a more recent traffic study, the North Harwich traffic study that VHB did with more recent counts. So I think it would be beneficial to look at the traffic volumes from that study, the traffic volumes from the traffic study for this project, and see if they're generally in alignment with each other, just to give ourselves a reality check to make sure that the data being used is accurate. We have to understand there's also fluctuations of traffic flow throughout the days. Every day you're not going to have the same amount of traffic, but I just want to be clear that the methodology that they use is within the industry standards, is what we would do if we were a traffic study. In terms of additional traffic data, I think the report can request that it may give you a little bit of peace of mind, but in terms of traffic engineering and industry standards, they're in line with that.
Well, you mentioned that the 2 days. Go ahead.
So what you mentioned was this, what study was done is within industry standards. Well, I understood it right. Yet I've heard information from people who spoke, and I've heard it elsewhere as well, that maybe it's not out of standards and there are other reference points, meaning it's 3 days, it's a week, it's 3 studies over 3 years, not just 2 years. Are there more stringent requirements for other types of projects that may be being quoted here? Or can you explain that a little bit, or something you're aware of?
So it's really up to the agency or the board that's reviewing it. You have specific guidelines for what they need to collect for data. Obviously, they need to follow those guidelines. Like I said, for residential development, typically we would look at the weekday time periods, because that's generally when we have most traffic on the road during the evening and through the course of the day. And it's also residential development, it's also when they generate the most traffic. As far as doing a 3-day versus a 2-day, I think the 3-day would be considered if you're looking at a weekend day, which would typically be done for, say, something like a retail use or a hotel, something that has potentially more traffic on the weekends than they would during the week. But for residential developments, the 2 days of daily traffic counts is generally what you would find for most residential developments of this size. So I think for other types of development, there would be different, maybe there would be more days you look at in different time periods, but for residential projects, this is pretty standard for traffic studies.
I have a question for you. Use the term, studies on a typical day. Could you define what that actually means?
So a typical day would be a weekday where there's no major events happening around the area. Just your kind of average day of traffic. In this case, they looked at two different time periods. They looked at summer count, so they actually counted during, I believe it was July, so they're actually looking at peak season traffic, which is something that is required under the code. It's just your average weekday during the summer. Not a holiday. Typically, it would be during a week like a holiday because their traffic volumes are a little bit different. So really what you want to do is find a week where there's no holiday. You want to count on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Mondays and Fridays are a little bit different with weekend traffic, and also now with people working from home, the traffic patterns are a little bit different. So generally a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday on a week where there's no holidays going on. In this case, it's season, and for other areas, you might want to count that when there's schools in session. But they also did provide what we call an average month, so that was kind of an off-peak season. Data analysis, there are factors to apply to the past that can account for that. So typical days is day in the middle of the week, no holidays, no major holiday travel. So that's what a typical day would be.
Thank you.
One question was raised on your peer review, whether you considered any other data besides what was generated, by the applicant's traffic professional, including any past traffic reports which you may have been a part of and done for the benefit of the town of Harwich. Mike, did you hear me?
You broke up for a second there.
Okay.
So I apologize. The sound is kind of cutting in and out a little bit.
All right, let me state it again. The question was raised, if you, in your peer review, you only utilize the data from the applicant, and did you, if not, did you consider any other traffic reports and studies which you had done in the past for the benefit and request of the town of Harwich?
So yeah, in the peer review, we looked at their data. Something that I did look at after the last meeting, I actually did look at the data and wanted to do a comparison to the North Harwich traffic study that I just mentioned. It is newer data. So there is that set of data too, and I think we're going to have to. The applicant's going to respond to our comments, and I would ask them, if they're there, if they haven't gotten to this yet, if they do an analysis of the traffic volumes in the North Harwich traffic study, and what they had done. I think that would be a good comparison. I have that right with me, but I would like to see what their analysis is of that as well. So there is this second data point where the counts, I believe those counts were done last October, so they were done peak season. But again, there's adjustments to adjust to peak season and average month. So I do think that would be something that would be helpful information for the applicant to provide for me to review. I mean, I have that information in front of me as well, but if they do that with, in whatever supplemental material they provide, that would be very helpful just to show a comparison of the two different data sets. And just so you know, I did look at it, and the numbers from the North Harwich traffic study compared to what they have in their study are generally in the same ballpark. They're not off by magnitudes or hundreds of percent. You do see some fluctuations with certain movements. I think generally their numbers they use in the afternoon might be a little bit higher than what we had at what the North Harwich traffic study says for the evening, maybe a little lower in the morning, but they're pretty consistent.
Thank you. Any other questions on this amendment? We're just going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to proceed with some presentations by the applicant for tonight's meeting. The next procedure is to hear the presentation tonight from the applicant. Conclusion exactly what is going to go on first, and everyone's thoughts on everything, and goes forward. Okay, ready? Okay, for the record, Peter Freeman from the applicant, attorney. First, I'll introduce our team members. Next to me is Rich Cole, both of the engineers. Joe Henderson from also here speaking tonight. Bob Dolan from North Village. Church Homes is here. And as a development consultant. So first, just to set the table what we're doing and relates to the traffic. So I'll tell you what we're doing. Mr. Jeffrey Dirk is doing and my peers. Because there was a lot of information asked about in the peer review report and the last hearing, and he's diligently working on it, but couldn't be ready for tonight. So the presentation by by Rich, is on the site-related traffic suggestions. And one thing that I will start off with that I think people will be happy to hear is, although we're open to any thoughts the board has, but we are proposing now to move the location of the daycare center. So it won't be a separate building, but it will be part of the community building that we have, number one. And number two, we're now proposing not to open it up to the public, but to keep it for residents. So that's what we're proposing now in response to a lot of comments. And then the other thing I just want to tell you before I turn it over to Rick, and this may not be a comprehensive list, but these comments that I'm about to relay are from Jeffrey Burback Consulting as to what he is doing, and we'll have prepared for the next hearing to get it to you folks and to Mike in advance. He's actively preparing all of the responses to the VHB peer review concerning traffic study. And I know for a fact that he has already looked at the data from the more recent VHB North Harwich traffic study. I won't state his conclusion, although I think it's essentially similar to what Mike said earlier, but he certainly will include that. Next, as requested, the study area has been expanded to include the Pleasant Lake Avenue, Route 6 east and westbound ramp intersections, as well as the Depot Street, Old Chatham Road, Backview Road intersection, which was at the request of the police chief. The trip generation calculations are being updated to reflect the elimination of site trips associated with the daycare center. And then the road safety audit that was requested for the Pleasant Lake Avenue, Queen Anne Road intersection is currently underway. So he's really addressing all of those things. So my suggestion is we're going to do at the next hearing, start off with that. And again, we'll make sure that you and peer reviewers have that in advance. So let me now turn it over to Rich, who will go through his presentation and slides as to the new proposals and changes that relate to the site plan related to traffic comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Attorney Freeman. For the record, my name is Rich Plater. I'm a principal engineer with Rosie Whitmore, a Sandwich-based consulting firm. We do a great deal of affordable housing projects. In fact, it's part of one of our missions to try to get more affordable housing for our people. Importantly, the comments I'm going to give today are site-related. They were generated by the peer review consultant. They were also generated by our traffic consultant in conversation. So we're going to go through that. I am a civil engineer by training. I have traffic experience. I am not a traffic expert, but I do certainly know perhaps more than the layperson about basic traffic. But I'm not here to answer off-site traffic questions, trip generation questions, or questions related to some of the off-site safety issues that have been raised. We certainly understand them. Before you on this slide are the topics that were raised by the peer review consultant in their letter related to the site design and how traffic and public safety are addressed for the project itself. There are more comments than are listed here, but we have basically consolidated them into a good group for you to digest. We will respond to all the peer review comments in a point-by-point response with potential changes. But specifically, number one, the daycare facility, as Attorney Freeman mentioned, is being relocated to the community center. I'll give more detail on that in a moment. We'll go through the fire truck emergency access turning movements for the site, what we've done, and we did update that based on some changes to the site, so I'll give you some more information on that. Traffic engineers suggested some traffic calming measures in the site. We'll show you what's being proposed there. The parking allocation exhibit, the peer review consultant was looking to see that the spaces that we're providing align with the units and the buildings that are being proposed, so people will have a place to park reasonably close to their house, to their living quarters. There were also some questions about deliveries of packages, mail, moving in and out of the facility, and how all of that will address traffic. I'll go through some of that in some more detail. And then there's some miscellaneous comments that are often addressed at the detailed site, almost construction drawing stage, but we will incorporate all of these measures into the plan with the revised plan. These include site signage, no parking here, no left turn there, those kind of turning movement signs as they relate to traffic, pavement markings, stop signs, double yellow line on the center line, those kind of things. Guest parking for bicycles was raised. That is a topic that's probably worth some further discussion on whether we're actually going to encourage more bike parking from guests that may bike to the resident, but we want to address that to your satisfaction and answer questions on that. There's an item called the site triangle line of sight. This was raised. This is at intersections to make sure landscaping or signs or piles of snow do not impact the ability of cars to be able to see. This is important, obviously, pulling out on the Queen Anne Road, but it's also important on the local intersections. And then finally, any site lighting that might impact traffic. We have a full site lighting plan, and it will also address a lot of other issues, dark sky compliant, but safety compliance for pedestrians and for vehicles and the like. Those will all be included in an updated plan. Next slide, please. So the daycare child care facility is proposed, that was proposed in the submission, is proposed to be relocated. I'll show that in a moment. The facility will be incorporated into the community center. It is planned for phase 3 of the project. So this would not go in right away by any means. The facility will only accept children from the residents of Pine Oaks Village, and because of that, no additional traffic volume will be generated from this revised program. And that will be reflected in the traffic engineer's updated report. The number of students, children, is still being finalized by the applicant. We have a rough number, but before we propose what's going to go on there, we want to finalize that. That hopefully will be completed in our response when we update these plans. Next slide. So just to orient you to the site here, the daycare center was located at the just off the intersection with Queen and our proposed driveway, a separate facility, and it had a modest parking component. We are moving that to the community center. It will ultimately have a separate entrance. I have a bigger plan here to show you that in a moment, but let's go to the next slide. So in place of the daycare center up at the intersection, we are proposing a new parking lot with a turnaround, and I'll get to that in a moment related to the bus stop and the bus loading issue. So we've tried to address that in this case. And then the daycare community building is being reprogrammed to accommodate the number of students that we ultimately are going to design this for. So there will be some modest changes to the size of that building. It'll probably be bigger, and the architects are working on that. So it's the reason I don't have something for you tonight. Next slide. So what we do for all projects is we secure the town's largest fire truck and the one that has the most difficult turning movements. In this case, it's the town's aerial fire truck SL100. We did get that from the fire chief and fire department, and we have run that through the entire site. We use a program called AutoTurn. It's the industry standard to make sure that the truck can make all these turning movements into the parking lots if necessary and around buildings and whatnot. That plan has not been resubmitted to the fire department. We will do that this week or next, so that'll happen. We get comments. Hopefully you'll get some feedback from them. You had some general comments from the fire chief regarding the site design at the last hearing. These will be more specific because they'll have something to react to. We did make minor changes, as I mentioned, to the site plan to accommodate some of these latest turning movements, and so those are incorporated. And we are adding a fire lane, which would be an emergency access fire lane around one of the lodge buildings, lodge building number 5, and I'll show you that in a moment. Next slide. So this one, you can't see all the little details. This just shows you all the turning movements that we did. They come off of Queen Anne Road, they go into most of the larger parking lots. We do take it through that first parking lot that I just mentioned for the bus stop. We take it into the important ones to be able to get behind the buildings, so to ensure that the fire truck can get into the parking lot, and if they need to, fight a fire from the rear of these buildings. So make sure that they can not only get in, but also get out. And then, of course, we have an emergency access lane, a fire lane to Main Street. And so we run it down there to make sure we can make the turning movements into our site off of Main Street, and then also make sure that the truck can turn both left and right once they get into our project streets. So I have some more detailed plans here. I'll just quickly go through an example. I'm not going to go through every single turn, but I'll give you an idea of what the fire chief will be looking at, and you will have as part of your package. If you have any questions on it, you can all ask us, and your peer reviewer, of course, will also look at this and make sure that we've done what is supposed to happen in this. So next slide, please. So here's just an example. This is between Lodge Buildings 1 and 3. We're building Lodge Building 1 in Phase 1. Lodge Building 3 wouldn't go in until Phase 3, but what this does show is the turning movements ultimately. So when Phase 1 goes in, it's the building to the north there at the top of the page. There's a parking lot behind the building, and the truck can go in and go out and make the turning movements to do that. So importantly, if there's a fire and the area of the truck has to get into that parking lot, they can pull right up to it. and then they can get out, they don't need to back out. So that incorporates that. And I show this 250-foot line from the parking lot on Lodge Building 3. That's sort of the maximum distance that a fire vehicle would be expected to be able to deal with a fire. So there's another parking lot to the south of this, and so this fire truck pulls into this parking lot to the south, they'll be able to, cover almost half the building. If the fire was on the other side, and another truck would be coming in from the other side. So this will be the kind of detail that the fire chief is going to want to look at and make sure he's happy with that. Next slide. So just a couple more of these just to show you. This one I showed because there's a little parking lot. This is Lodge Building 4 to the left of the screen there. And we want to make sure that, again, that truck can get into that area and be within 250 feet of the rear of that building so they can get their hoses and their equipment out there to respond to a fire. And not only that, they can make that sharp turn, in this case, coming out of it to the right, and get back. Now, I know you can't see all these little lines, but there are two sets of lines for all these turning movements. One are the wheels to make sure that they don't hop up over a curb or into a car. And number two is the bumper and the chassis. So the software we use looks at both of these. And you got to make sure that the bumpers and the chassis, it can go over the curb because it's higher than that, but it can't run into a car. So in parking spaces, we're looking at the green line and the orange line, reddish orange. And then when we're going around the curb, we're really looking at tires to make sure that they can make the turn. Now, trucks can go up and over the curbs. We don't design to do that. So you want to make sure every radius that a truck can do or is likely to do is going to work from the designer's perspective. Next slide. And then I'll just point this one out because this is where we added a fire lane. We do these in a lot of projects. These are emergency access lanes only. They won't. We use a reinforced turf. We have two different kinds of products for that. Some fire departments like to use a concrete-based product, and other fire chiefs are okay with what we call a geogrid, or it's a plastic-based product, but it's designed for a fire truck load. In this case, we haven't specified that because we're going to talk to the fire chief to see exactly what he wants to do there. But you can let grass grow up through that, and so it's not something that a regular customer is going to just kind of come in and take a shortcut and zip out through the emergency fire lane. The signage that I mentioned at the outset, there will be a sign there, and then there will be a curb, so they don't have to hop over. So, it's not something that they would do. So that's a proposal, that's new, that was not on the plan that we submitted. We actually figured that we could fight this fire from the parking lot, but when we started looking at it a little more carefully, we were like, well, the fire chief probably isn't going to want to try to back out of that. They could. It's going to be a challenge. So to avoid that, you get it so that they can do this loop. And that's a pretty reasonable request from most fire departments to make sure they can come and go for any fire incident so that they don't have to, because you never know, they might have to call another fire and they don't have to be wasting time backing out. So easy in and easy out is the rule there. That's it for the fire movements. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a blow up of the parking lot we mentioned up by the Queen Anne Road driveway intersection. And what we've done here is we've run a school bus through that. Believe it or not, a school bus actually has a more difficult turning movement than a large ladder fire truck. They're one of the more difficult trucks or vehicles to get around that type radius. So this turning new parking lot is designed to have what we call parent drop-off spaces. So we've added up 8 parking spaces up near. We're showing a proposed bus stop on Queen Anne Road, but we have designed this to allow the bus to pull into that area. We could move that bus stop to the island in this parking lot or on the opposite side of the street to do that. The applicant intends to contact the school committee and ask them if they're willing to come onto private property, and probably more importantly, if their insurance allows that to happen, and if they're willing to do that. Usually that's the restriction of going onto a private street, but the applicant certainly is willing to accommodate and will accommodate that, and that what that would do is keep the buses from stopping. The buses could go further into the project and make the turning movements along the major street. They wouldn't be pulling into those parking lots that we evaluated, but that typically, we're not going to, I don't think they're going to do that, but we would certainly be willing to have them come into the site. So this has additional parking spaces for the first the townhouse to the south or the bottom of the sheet there, and sidewalk access. So the idea here is that parents in the community on an inclement day or a bad day, or they just don't want their children walking to the bus stop on their own, to drive their kids up there, park in there, see the bus, they can hop out, and then get on the bus, they can leave. So accommodating that.
Excuse me, how many buses would that be accommodating?
8 parking spaces for, those will be labeled as 15-minute parking for those school bus
How
parking.
many buses you pull in, I mean, I'm not quite sure.
No, I think you could put in 2, 3 buses maximum on that, and then have them stop and stand in the parking in that area.
When you speak to the school committee or member of administration, you find out what they anticipate the timing would be, for school bus pickups.
Sure.
They anticipate there could be 2 or 3
Yeah,
at the same time.
sure.
And
Absolutely.
make sure we can accommodate what they consider to be the timing of the buses coming in.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay, the other topic that the peer review raised was traffic calming. The comment was a little general in nature. It said, it sort of acknowledged that we have components in the project that are natural traffic calming. The width of the road, we're purposely trying to do a narrow road. It's 20 feet wide. It's wide enough for the fire truck and a school bus, but narrower than a 24-foot street where speeds tend to increase. A lot of studies have shown that 24-foot road straight with no parking on the street, you get speeding. Parallel parking tends to reduce speed. So that's the reason why we've used a lot of parallel parking on this project, is proposed traffic calming, and as well as the neighborhood benefits of having a parallel situation. Also has benefits for drop-off and pickup of rideshare passengers, Uber. It also has benefits for moving day. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But the one stretch that I've shown in the rectangle here, while it has the parallel parking, this is between lodge buildings 1 and 3 through to the community center, is kind of a straight shot. And a straight shot, as many drivers will know, leads to potential speed. These other curves and the hills that we built into the design will reduce speed. So in consultation with our traffic consultant, Jeff Dirk, he's like, the place where you might benefit from some additional traffic calming is this straightaway. So we're proposing the 2 intersections and the crosswalk to be raised. I'll show you on the next slide a little more detail of that. So next.
That was a line in orange, right?
Yeah, reddish orange. So you'll see here a blow up of that segment and just two rectangles at these two intersections. These are so-called tabletop, they're raised intersections. The actual crosswalk is raised. It's getting to be more and more common in areas where we want traffic calming and where we want pedestrians to be able to cross safely. We already have so-called bump outs to narrow the amount of distance that you have to travel. But adding two raised intersections here and tabletops, that's a glorified speed bump, but it's not the kind of speed bump that you miss. You kind of hit it. You can see it coming. And then the crosswalk in the middle between the two, which we think would be used frequently because it's directly opposite the two large buildings. It connects to the community center. It will connect to where the daycare center is going to go. It ultimately would have a lot of pedestrian usage. And so we think that makes a lot of sense to raise that one up. So that would be a raised crosswalk. Not just a little speed bump, the actual full crosswalk, and it has a gentle ramp you kind of have to slow down. If you don't slow down, you do tend to bottom out if you're going too fast. But it's a very effective way to get the traffic on. So we're proposing that in the updated plan. We'll reflect that. We'll talk about what our next steps are in a moment. Next slide there. So the next area, and I can kind of go through quickly these, but I do want to talk about this. One of the comments, from the peer review is it appeared that we had enough parking spaces on the site, but we wanted to ensure that the spaces were aligned with the units where people were going to live, and so that they couldn't walk in their car ultimately. So we were using a combination of on-street parking, parallel spaces, and off-street parking. And to make these assumptions in our design, we had done this exercise, it just wasn't included in the material that was submitted to you. We've done this exercise, so it wasn't a hard lift for us. But we designed each of the large buildings to have 1.5 spaces per unit. That number is derived from your zoning ordinance requires 2 spaces for all units, regardless of type of residential unit. There's no differentiation. But the industry in these apartment complexes and the number of 1-bedroom units that are being proposed, the number of 2-bedroom, the number of 3-bedroom, this 1.5 number is a pretty significant track record of being more than adequate for this type of use. So we're doing 1.5 for the large buildings. For the townhouses, which often will have a couple at a minimum, and likely have 2 cars, we have 2 spaces per each townhouse unit. So the counts are based on the number of units in each of those building types, 2 for the townhouses and 1.5 for the large buildings. We have 4 42-unit large buildings and 1 36-unit large building. And we have 4 8-unit townhouses and 1 6-unit townhouse. And so we accommodate all the parking associated with that. We also provide parking for the community center, the daycare facility. I'll show you that in more detail when we get to that. The bus stop parking, which I mentioned earlier, 8 spaces for that. Maintenance parking for the maintenance crews have 5 spaces. They will be located over in the wastewater treatment plant. I'll show you where those are. For mowing, for maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant, for snow plowing, for any maintenance activity. We do not expect to have 5 full-time staff on the site, but there will certainly be that. Now, Management staff would not be using that. They would be parking in the areas that are designated for the community center, so that's separate. We've also added 6 loading zone parallel spaces that are 30 feet. The typical parallel parking space is only 22 feet. You can park a big truck in a 22-foot parallel space. But a UPS van or an Amazon van, it requires a little more space. So we provided 30 feet in those, and those are aligned mostly in the lodge buildings, but also to accommodate all of the units. And those are shown on the plan. Those will be designated as a 15-minute parking and not for residences. And so they'll be open for those uses. We have 9 ADA accessible units throughout the site, which is the requirement for that. So the total number, what we're showing you now is 425 units with the or 25 spaces, not units, 425 spaces, and with the peer reviewer review was 418. So essentially we've added those 7 spaces, and 6 of them are for this van, for this deliveries. So let's look at a couple of these in detail.
Let me just ask one question. How do you accommodate for visitor parking?
Okay, so visitor parking is accommodated in the sheer number. Okay, you don't fill these parking lots in 1.5 per unit and 2 per unit, because not every, we have 1-bedroom apartments, they're not going to have 2 cars or 1.5 cars. So it's accommodated, and your peer reviewer can weigh in on that. Now, I'm not going to, and our traffic consultant will weigh in on that. And the experience of the affordable housing industry that's building these on Cape Cod can vouch for that. Like I started, we do a number of these projects. We go as low as 1.2 units, 1.2 spaces per unit, and never over 1.7. Here we're really right at that number total. So you're going to have plenty of parking spaces for visitors. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is the overview. You can't really see this, but you'll get this plan in your package, which has colored dots for each building that shows the actual parking spaces that would be near and close to the units. We do not propose to have assigned parking spaces for the tenants. It's just not done. But we do make sure that we have enough spaces for each of these buildings that are within a short walking distance so that you can park a car and take your groceries into your unit. So the parking spaces are provided for the delivery, mail, and roadside for Uber. Those are 30 feet, as I mentioned. They're going to be time restricted. Tenant moving trucks is always a big deal in a community like this. The nice thing about having the on-street parking is the moving will be scheduled with the management office, and the management office will put in cones and basically restrict parking, 3 parallel spaces during the move day. And that's how that's typically done. And so that'll all be arranged with the new tenants when they come in, and when they move, they request through the management office, hey, we're moving on such and such a date, the moving van is coming, I need 1 or 2 or 3 spaces, and those that's the way that'll happen. And it's right out front of each one of these buildings, so very convenient in terms of being able to accommodate movement. Okay, let's look at a couple of these, and then I'll zip through most of them. This first one I think is important to understand. 8 parking spaces for the bus are labeled in blue or aqua. The townhouse unit 2 is an 8-unit townhouse. It has 16 required parking spaces. 3 of them will be in that first space. The ADA spaces or the accessible spaces aren't counted, so those are extra spaces. that are not part of the base calculation. And then the rest of those spaces would be on the street. And then the 30-foot space for the delivery is a purple dot. And now you see that throughout the whole site. And there's a key for this on the plan, so that when you get it, you'll be able to look at it and say, okay, that makes sense to me, or it doesn't. The townhouse number 1 at the top of the page is a 6-unit townhouse, so 2 times 6 is 12. So we need 12 spaces. We're putting some of them in the off-street parking lot and the rest of them in the on-street parking. That's the theme. It's a combination of off-street and on-street. What we've tried to do throughout the whole project is to provide at least one off-street parking for, and this is a generalization, for per unit. Now you can see this townhouse number 2, most of those are on-street. That's just the way it's going to work in some cases. But for the most part, we have at least one car can be in the parking lot, and the others would be on the parallel spaces on the street. So we can just kind of roll through these. Let's look at the next one just so you can kind of see the theme here. We've tried to make sure, like for example, Lodge Building 3 is a 42-unit lodge building. 1.5 times 42 is 63 required spaces, not including the loading space and not including an accessible ADA space. But you can see the red dots. There are a bunch of those on the street in front of Lodge Building 3. There are some in the parking lot to the right that leads up to the community center. There's some in the parking lot to the south. There's a looping parking lot there. And there are actually a few across the street. So there are 1.5 spaces within easy walking distance. Presumably there aren't going to be too many people in building number 3 that are going to park across the street, but they can. And building number 1, which is a 36-unit complex and one requires 54 spaces, most of those can be parked. In fact, I think all of them can be off-street parking. So that's how we did this. We sized the parking spaces. We're trying not to make them too big. We don't want to have all this extra asphalt for that's not needed. And we want to have on-street parking to aid in the neighborhood design, to aid in the traffic calming, and we don't want to have more spaces than we need. So it is a bit of a juggling act to get the balance between on-street and off-street. Let's go to the next one. I think that's the community center. Yeah. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the community center because there was a question and a concern about the previous one. Again, this will ultimately depend on the number of students, and we will have that answer addressed. We do have flexibility to add a few more parallel spaces on the street road B to the bottom of the sheet, but we're proposing 5 temporary loading spaces for the parent drop-off along that stretch. So that would be 15-minute parking, again, signage, and they would pull in and park. Now, keep in mind that the residents live in this. The residents live in the community and their children live in the community. So our expectation is some people will walk their kids, some people will drive their kids, particularly on their way to work. The number of students ultimately and the number of drop-offs will be linked. And that answer we will get to you and your traffic consultant, so and our traffic consultant, frankly, to make sure that we're in a good position for that. The green spaces are for community residents, just extra parking if they want to drive to the community center for an activity that's going on. They live over in Lodge Building 5, and it's too far to walk. And then we have 5 staff parking spaces for the daycare center. It'll be assigned to them, and also limited to those. It'll be the signage that only the staff can park.
Good. If you might prioritize what's your comments considering
Yeah, I'll be
wrapping
done.
up in the next 10 minutes.
I'll be done in 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you can scroll through the next one, just, this is more of the same, but I just wanted to make sure your packet has all of the units and all of the parking allocations. There will be an updated plan as well for the whole entire site, so you can scroll through that one, and this one, and this one. And then, to conclude, so our updated plans will be submitted to you, your traffic consultant, the fire department for the turning movements. And we will address the items that were raised in the peer review. The site signage, we're going to add that, and pavement markings. The traffic calming will be a little more detailed than the rectangles I showed on the plan, but not a final design at this stage. It'll be preliminary design associated with what's needed to make sure it's going to work. We'll evaluate the gas and bicycle parking. There was a comment. The site triangle, line of sight, snow storage, and site lighting, which I had mentioned. And our expectation is we will have at least some back and forth with the fire department. There's usually some questions on this, and we'll get through that. So last slide, I just want to, so just any questions in the remaining time? We have at least 15 minutes, so try to entertain any questions you have.
John, any questions?
Well, I was trying to square the numbers from the traffic study we reviewed at the last meeting and the parking study here. With 382 units, assuming we maxed out every resident parking, the traffic study showed over 2,000 trips. Basically, the assumption is that there's going to be 300 trips in and out of every single car parked here on a daily basis. You doing my math right?
I don't have that data at the top of my head. It's hard for me to answer that question. Jeff will be able to answer that question, and I'll make sure that he answers it in response that comes in with traffic. In general, there's a certain number of trips per 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and there were a number of trips associated with the daycare facility that contemplated off-site. Can't remember exactly what that number, but that was a pretty sizable number. They'd come all at one time. So that was a peak demand issue. So that will have an impact on the total trip generation. So that number will change because the use has changed. You'll get an answer on that. I'll make sure you get an answer on that.
All right, so it's never up to me not to have a question. All right, regarding the meeting with the school bus, the school committee, school department regarding school bus access on the property. I'm sure that if it is an insurance issue, that perhaps the insurance company would take into account we're not going to be loading this parking children on a busy road. The other aspect of it, I'd be interested to know that the denial, if there is one, is based upon the additional cost of insurance to load children on private property. And if that's the case, if it's an insurance consideration just for Pine Oaks, what is that number? Would be the increase in insurance costs, and something which I'd like to review during the deliberations.
I don't know the answer to the anticipated your question, so we'll try to find that out from the school department as well.
But also from the discussion with the school department, obviously there's kids that are picked up on Queen Anne Road now, right? So I'd be interested in what their view is of how that estimates the need for buses, increasing the amount of traffic, or if these children can be accommodated in the bus that's already driving up and down the airport.
Understood. Okay. Further questions, anybody? All right. I just have a name. Amy, are you still on board?
And
Okay, so it's now July, and our next meeting is August 6th, and the plan for that was site plan, stormwater and drainage. Your recommendation, which after talking to you, I agree with, but we'll talk about the board on this. So the plan is, the recommendation is the next meeting, we continue with the traffic study, all the other information we need, we'll try to wrap that up, and then delay the site plan, stormwater topic to either later that meeting or another time. I'm looking at the schedule, and I think we need to look in advance here. I don't see how at this point we're going to be able to complete further regulations, these meetings, prior to October 21st at this stage. And it's my understanding that to extend the meeting, it actually has to be a request from the applicant. Is that correct, Amy?
No, the board can ask the applicant to extend the 180 days.
Okay.
The applicant did, somewhat ask for extension tonight, for tonight because Jeff Dirk wasn't ready with his follow-up on traffic. So, perhaps the applicant will voluntarily enter into an agreement to extend the 180 days by an additional 30 days. That would probably be the best thing to start with.
Yeah, at this point, just like to be a little more proactive on that, I'd like to see the fact that we're looking at how we're extending this, 60 days, just to give ourselves coverage. And one reason for bringing that up is if we're going to have meetings in this auditorium books up pretty quickly. So we need to look in advance, as far as even this fall and into October and November, what particular dates would be available to use this auditorium. So I don't want to wait till the last minute to book, available times when everyone can gather, and also consideration of not only your availability, but the availability of board members, which is critical, during this process. So, what is the first step, Amy? Are you suggesting they'll go for an extension of 30 days and look at it in another month or two? Would be
sure. We just need to discuss this with Attorney Freeman.
Okay, so you'll be taking care of that separately with him?
Well,
right now?
I'm happy to share my thoughts, and
Sure.
I don't in any way disagree with your concern, and we certainly want to be accommodating with you folks because it's a good process and very thorough. That said, it is only July, and October is still 3 months away, so I absolutely will not leave you all, hanging until even September, October. But what I would ask, with your understanding, is that I discuss it internally and talk to you, and Amy, outside the hearing, and just, in all likelihood, grant an extension when we meet again in August, have our answer then.
So I'm looking at this point, as soon as we can, scheduling this all, for November meeting, in a date which, all the board members committed, so it's a lot to consider. Also getting into the holiday season, and you can take that all into account. We just want to do it now, as soon as we can, rather than the last minute.
Sure, and actually, I probably don't need to wait until the August 3rd, but I can send an email to Rachel, and that way we start the process. Rachel does it or somebody else, but it's occurring whatever the date for this building.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for tonight? It is 9:21. Right, we could address and leave early. Or if there's actually some in the audience that wants to make one last comment, I would entertain opening the public session up for 2 more speakers. Okay.
Steve Gallerani, 368 Queen Anne Road. I'm just wondering if there was any reason to figure that the snow removal with the parking is, are all the cars going to be gone when the snow is removed? And if not, can the fire truck still get through there?
That's one question. Thank you.
Well, from my perspective, with much experience, number one, I will defer to our traffic and civil engineers, but the reality is, of course, that you cannot remove all the parking in advance, but there are management ways to do it that are accepted industry-wide, and, the fire department understands that, and the plowing companies understand it. So we can give you, a better answer at the next hearing based on both our experts as well as the management company and their experience.
Okay, thank you. And is that it for, did you want to make this be our last person?
Paula Miles, and I wanted to get back to the fire trucks for a moment. I did talk to Fire Chief LeBlanc, who said that their 40-foot ladder truck would be able to reach the tallest spaces, and if they needed more than one, they'd call mutual aid from other towns. And he said he wanted to see trucks come along Main Street and then take a right turn onto Queen Anne Road. Now, we heard that intersection referred to earlier tonight as a hairpin turn. So I'm just saying, 40-foot trucks making that hairpin turn at a notably congested intersection is something to think very carefully about. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess regarding the reports on traffic study, I apologize if I'm not clear about this. And Mike, I know you're still online. And are we including, again, an additional study, regarding Main Street Depot, which seems to be a question from a lot of people here, also the board, the impact there?
I believe that's included. Mike can answer. I think that's part of the analysis listed that Jeffrey Dirk will be doing.
Okay. I wasn't thinking about it. All right, thank you. I believe we're complete for tonight. Any other comments or questions from anybody? It is now 9:25. And I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting. Oh, and we're going to have continuance. Al, would you mention or continue this meeting, please? Go ahead, go for it.
Now can you hear me? All right, I move to continue case number ZB 2025-21 to the next scheduled public hearing on August 6th, located at the 204 Cultural Arts Municipal Building, with the hearing starting no earlier than 6:30 p.m. in the auditorium.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. It is 9:26. I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you coming out.